Hi, I'm the fellow passenger. My friend Ned Rush and I have been corresponding on WhatsApp about Electro, and he wanted to do like a collaboration challenge type thing and asked me if I was keen on making a sample library for him of electro sounds that he could then use to make some old school electro with. And yes, I'm totally up for that. And in this video, I'm just going to show you the equipment that I used to make this sample library. If you want to see the result of this challenge, you should jump over to Ned Rush video and on his channel, and I'll put a link to that in the description. But also, if you want to get access to the same sample library that I was sending him, you can sign up to my Patreon, also a link in the description. But now let's talk about hardware synths. One of the synths I used is the ARP Axe, sort of a baby brother of the ARP Odyssey. It's a single oscillator synth where you got square wave with pulse width modulation, you got sawtooth, and you also got noise. I think it sounds really big, even if it is only one oscillator. And I think you can pick these up for a fairly low price compared to many other single oscillator vintage analog synths. And to me, it sounds different to what a Roland would do. Even though the feature set is sort of similar to something like a Roland SH09, I think this sounds distinctively different from that. But you can hear in the background some of the type of sounds that you will find in this library. So super good for bass. You can also do some effects type sounds. You can make some percussion, also lead type sounds. But yes, it's monophonic. Another synth that I've been using to create really good bass sounds with, etc., is the Roland SH2. In a way, very similar to something like an SH101, but perhaps more similar in sound to an SH09, which has got slightly older character compared to the SH101. The big difference between the SH2 and the SH09 is that the SH2 has got dual oscillators, so you can do some nice detuned stuff. But again, this is a monophonic synthesizer, but amazing for bass lines, leads, and you can also do those really electronic sounding effects and stuff. We're also going to need some percussion, and for that I wanted to give Ned Rush the opportunity of making that sort of classic electro sound, but I don't have a real 808. I have the RD8, but those sounds are also, well, the actual 808 things. Like, he will have all those samples already, and I wanted to have something where you have a bit more ability to tweak the sound, so therefore I'm using the AVP Synth SD6. I think this is an amazing machine. It's in the same ballpark as an 808, but it has its own flavor, I think. And you also have the ability to tweak the sounds a bit more compared to an 808. Although it's focusing on bass drum, snare, clap, and then you have 3 different flavors of sort of hi-hat cymbal sounds, which you can tweak quite a lot. I don't know for sure, but you can sweep between NS and MET, and I think that stands for noise and metal. And I assume the metal sound, that's a bit more towards like a TR-606 or something, where you have, I think, frequency modulated square waves or something. I think that's what it is. And the noise one is just more just filtered white noise, I suppose. But we also need some more other percussive sounds that sound completely unreal. And for that, I used the Michigan Synthworks SY 0.5, which is a clone of one of the voices on the Pearl Percussion amazing machine. I wish I had an original one, but I think this one sounds pretty good too. And also, in addition to that, it just had input for modulating a lot more parameters than the original, as I understand it. Anyway, I also used the TX81Z, the classic FM synth by Yamaha, to mainly create little percussive sounds that are not necessarily a kick or a snare. They're sort of all these other sounds in between. And then also for some additional effect type stuff, I used the Behringer 2600 to create some electronic textures, swoops, things, not necessarily just percussive, but you know, good for transitions and that sort of stuff. And we need some polyphony, don't we? So for that, I used the Juno 1, the Roland Alpha Juno 1. Even though I didn't really make chords, I just have to emphasize also, like, all the sounds in this library are all one-shots. And anything that is meant to have some tonal quality is just tracked to C. It could be C in different octaves, but I decided to do some long notes. So if Duncan wants to make some sort of pads or things, string type things, he could use this. So yeah, use the Roland Alpha Juno 1, which I suppose is seen at the sort of lower end of desirability of vintage Junos. I still think this is an amazing synth, and you can pick these up easily for under 500 quid, certainly more close to 400 pounds. And I still think they sound amazing. I've had mine for a very long time, and I used the DT300 controller, which is a modern version of the PG300, which is the original one from Roland, which gives you hands-on control over the DCOs. It's a single oscillator synth. I think it's got 6 voices, if I remember correctly. But what makes it quite different from at least the other Junos is the waveform shapes. So you got a square wave of different widths, but also with variable pulse width. And then you got sawtooth, which is a sort of a ramp up, but with different amount of harmonics in it. The same with the sub oscillator. I said it was only single oscillator, but I don't know how they do the sub oscillator, if that's just a division or if that's a completely separate oscillator. You can't tune it differently, but it is a square wave with varying degrees of pulse width, which is interesting. And it's also got a noise source. So you can create quite unique tones. This synth, I suppose, his main claim to fame is the Hoover sound, a classic sort of rave sound. But I think it's really nice for pads and string type sounds. And also you can use it for pretty good bass lines and things. And it's got a chorus as well. I think this is a completely overlooked synth. So check it out if you haven't done that already. Worthwhile picking one up. And there's also software controllers for it. But if you are picking one up, don't worry about, you should get a controller when you can, but you feel like, buying the controller and the synth, or finding a synth with a vintage controller, all of a sudden money stacks up. Just buy the synth and maybe get a software controller for it if you want to get started, and then you just get the controller further down the line. Pick them up while you can still afford those synths, if you can. Good stuff. All right, so we covered some of those sounds there. Then I also wanted to create a few extra sounds, as in kick drums. There's a couple of kicks in the library from that AVP SD6. But I also decided to make a whole bunch of kicks using the Alpha Juno 1. And I also used its cousin, the Roland JX3P, which is a... no, they're not similar. Both of them sound like Roland synths, but they don't sound like one another. So the JX3P is also got DCOs, but it's a 2 oscillator synth rather than just one. It has not those alternative waveforms that the Alpha Juno's got. But yeah, so it's got a completely unique tone to it. It's also can do the cross modulation, which creates more sort of interesting metallic sounds. I wouldn't sell one for the other. If you just buy the synth on its own, I would say the JX3P is often marginally more expensive than the Alpha Juno 1, but sometimes you get one that's more expensive than the other. If you find it with the original controller, suddenly it gets quite expensive. But there is also, I've managed to pick up, I was lucky to find a vintage one for a very reasonable price. But otherwise, D-Tronics, who made the DT300 that I'm using with the Alpha Juno 1, they also make a DT200, which is for the JX3P. But you should, if you're lucky and you keep your eyes out, you will be able to find a JX3P for under £500. And again, I feel like both of these synths, the JX3P and the Alpha Juno 1, they sit really nicely in the mix in a way that I don't feel other modern synths do. I can't explain why. I think both of them sound great. But yeah, but for this sample library, I only used the JX3P to make some additional kicks, because you have, for both of these, you can assign the envelope to both the filter and the oscillator, which I've done on both of them. But I would say that the envelope on the filter with high resonance is more part of the kick sound rather than the oscillator itself. Also worth mentioning that I could maybe do a better comparison between these two if that's what you're after, but I just want to mention that the Alpha Juno 1's envelope has got a lot more to it than the JX3P. The JX3P has got a classic attack, decay, sustain, release, whereas the Alpha Juno has got level and time. So how long each of the different stages are and what is the maximum level of each of those stages. So I think I'm quite happy with just an attack, decay, sustain, release, but I just wanted to mention this. The other thing is to create a bit of, what should we say, kick in these kicks that I've made with these synths. I had to do a bit of extra processing. Most of the other sounds, the only thing I did to them was just maybe remove a bit of noise. I've got some issues with USB ground loop something going on, so I've done that. But otherwise, the sounds, they have been trimmed and normalized and denoised, but otherwise they haven't really been processed. But these ones, to create a bit of kick, I did process them through my Mackie CR1604. It's the original model, not the VLC. So you can use the EQ on that to great effect, to add a bit of saturation through there. And then I ran it through the Alesis 3630 compressor, classic cheap one, the Daft Punk compressor, just to create a bit of punch. The kicks that I created with these two, because of the compression and saturation and everything, they're a bit noisier, but I still think they sound interesting. All right, I shall not babble on any further. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about this hardware. So check out Ned Rush video for what he's made. I wonder, did he go for Detroit, Miami bass? What direction did he take it in? Drexciya, super futuristic stuff? I don't know. At the time of recording this, I have no idea what he's doing with these sounds. But there's loads in there. There's several hundred. So if you want to get hold of them, check out my Patreon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.